The Red Sox appear to have a new voice in this dugout going forward. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbett. Thank you very much for clicking on this video. Folks, it is news dump day, right? Every week, at the end of this week, we do a news dump video. And for this one, we're going right back to that coaching well, because right now, that's really the only place that the Red Sox are making significant changes, which makes sense considering they can't actually do anything to their roster until the end of the World Series. But they brought in a new coach that I think a lot of people are going to sit there and immediately get scared of, but I think is a little bit ridiculous. So we'll talk about that in a second, but we do have a couple of awards that we need to get through first. First and foremost, Alex Bregman is a finalist for third base Silver Slugger Award, which is not a small feat considering he was out for a pretty long period of time. I don't think he really has a shot at winning it, but still, the guy hit .273 this year with a .360 on base percentage and a .462 slug for the highest OPS he has had since 2022 and the highest OPS plus he's had since that same season. 18 home runs, 62 RBIs in 114 games, ain't too shabby, right? We knew that he was a productive baseball player. The other award that we got to talk about is the first of what is supposed to be a pretty decent amount of awards here for Ceddanne Rafaela, because yesterday, Red Sox center fielder won the Fielding Bible Award for the best center field defense in the entire sport. Now, the Fielding Bible Award is an award that a lot of people actually believe is the better voting process for defensive players in the sport because it's much more analytical. It's based on numbers, eye tests that really don't factor in a ton to the Gold Glove Award, or at least that's what the narrative was for a very long time. Now that sabermetrics have come in and joined the Gold Glove Award here, the Gold Glove Award is pretty equal to this Fielding Bible Award, but still, right, it's a great start for Ceddanne Rafaela, who should very easily run away with the Gold Glove in center this season. Then on the November 2nd, when the Gold Glove winners are announced, he should absolutely be announced as a Platinum Glove finalist too. Anything else would be absolutely ridiculous in my opinion, considering he was one of the best defensive players in every single category you look at in center field and had above metrics at second base. Regardless though, outside of my ranting here, it's cool to see Ceddanne start to get recognized on a national level for what we saw throughout this entire season, right? How many times this year were we like, oh my God, Ceddanne Rafaela got to that baseball? How many times this year did he make an incredible play? And we were just like, oh yeah, that's what Ceddanne Rafaela does, right? It's such a good asset for the Red Sox to have in this outfield, right? He's just such a weapon defensively, and it's the main reason why he's going to continue playing for this team. I will say, with all these awards coming out for Ceddanne Rafaela, I think we can go back to that conversation we've had, I think, numerous times on this channel and really in Red Sox Nation in general here, of the fact that Ceddanne Rafaela should just simply be a center fielder, right? I understand why they moved him to shortstop in 24. I understand why they moved him to second base in 25, but ideally for the Red Sox, one of their smaller goals this offseason would be to either acquire or build up enough depth on this infield where you could just let Ceddanne eat in center field. I mean, he was a better hitter out there this season. He was a better defensive player out there this season, right? And he's such a legitimate, game-changing defensive player in center field. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me to stick him in second base or shortstop or whatever, regardless of the fact that he can be a plus defender over there, right? I would prefer him being the best center fielder in baseball to him being a above average shortstop or an above average second baseman, right? And I think a lot of you guys would agree with me. So it just sort of reminded me, these awards, of, hey, this offseason, let's get to a point where Ceddanne Rafaela can just be a center fielder and, worst case scenario, he plays right field for a little bit or something like that, as opposed to we're going to put him infield, outfield, we're going to put him all over the place. But regardless, a really good first sign that Ceddanne Rafaela is going to get some legitimate hardware for his defense this offseason. However, now that we've got those out of the way, let's have a conversation about this new coach, shall we? As you guys are aware, if you've been paying attention to the channel over the last few weeks, there aren't going to be a ton of changes to the Red Sox coaching staff, right? Every single one of the Red Sox sort of main coaches here is going to be returning for 2025, even to the point where Jason Varitek is expected to come back in his same role. The only one who's really kind of a question mark right now is Ramon Vasquez, who's interviewing for that Minnesota Twins job, so if something happens there, we'll talk about that. But for the most part, all these coaches are coming back. Outside of one name, and that's Ben Rosenthal, an assistant hitting coach for the Red Sox in 2025, who the Red Sox parted ways with this offseason, right? That's just sort of a nicer way of saying the Red Sox fired this guy. So they did have one vacancy here that they needed to fill, and they ended up filling it with someone in this Red Sox organization. So I don't really know if it's hired or promoted, but regardless, according to Jen McCaffrey, the person who ended up taking over this role, unfortunately, was not Manny Ramirez. I was still on the Manny Ramirez hype train. I still thought that would be incredibly fun. Instead, it is minor league hitting coordinator John Soteropulos, who has taken over the assistant hitting coach and coming up to the big leagues to work alongside Dylan Lawson and Pete Fatse going forward. Now, if you don't recognize this name, don't worry. I didn't either when the name was announced, so I had to do a little bit of research into what he was doing in the Red Sox organization before this. He joined the Red Sox back in 2023, and since then, he's been in this role that they're calling the minor league hitting coordinator. What he was really doing was working with minor league hitters on maximizing their bat speed and exit velocity. It's one thing that actually really stood out is that bat speed and exit velocity over these last couple of seasons for a lot of big Red Sox prospects, right? Roman Anthony started really hitting the ball in the air, and when he started hitting the ball in the air, he became an absolute juggernaut prospect in minor league baseball. Happened around the time they hired this guy. Christian Campbell and his meteoric rise had a lot to do with his exit velocities off his bat, especially to the pull side, which he lost a little bit in 2025, but can be partially credited to this guy, John. Marcelo Meyer actually specifically talked about when he had his power surge, I can't remember if it was 24, the beginning of 2025, mentioning that, hey, this organization has been focusing on bat speed and exit velocities, and it's helped me get to a point where I can actually start to bring this, power stroke into my game a little bit. And it's not just these big three prospects that we've seen this kind of conversation surrounding yet. I mean, you talk about Mikey Romero, right? This is a guy who really came to life in terms of his power numbers this season, and one thing that he mentioned actually in our interview before the 2025 season was this emphasis on the bat speed and exit velocities. Justin Garcia, another guy who had the most home runs he's had in his minor league career over his last couple of seasons, coincidentally, right after they hired this guy, John. So you could sort of see the successes in minor league baseball of what John has been able to do with some of these guys, right? And again, it's important to note it's not just these big three prospects, because those guys are so talented that they were going to make waves regardless of, who was coaching them and how they were coming up. It's also these guys who maybe kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think come out of nowhere is the right word, but you understand what I'm saying, right? It's helping everyone in this minor league system. These prospects that could impact the big league club, bring that, power stroke more into their game and create a more dynamic hitter. So you sit there with this guy and it's like, okay, right? You could see quantifiably the successes that he's had in minor league baseball. It makes sense why the Red Sox would want to see what he could do at the major league level. However, there's one thing that I have to say about him that I think a lot of people are immediately going to be scared of a bit. And that is that John Soteropulos did come from Driveline. Woo, right? He's a 32-year-old that played some college ball over at Berkeley. Out of college, he jumped into Driveline, first on the business side of things as a bit of a salesman, and then eventually worked his way into a trainer at Driveline. And for some reason, man, the second you say Driveline, some people immediately lose their minds. I personally don't get it, especially on the hitting side of things specifically, right? We're going to talk about the pitching side of things in a second, because I do think there are some valid concerns over there. But on the hitting side of things for the Red Sox, Driveline wasn't an incredibly big factor into their major league team this season. I mean, you take a look at it, right? Cora, not really a Driveline guy, right? I'm sure he loves analytics 100%, but he wasn't exactly in this sort of Driveline pipeline that a lot of these other teams are hiring from. Pete Fatse was a former player. He wasn't really a Driveline guy. Dylan Lawson, he was a coach that worked his way up through minor league baseball. Ben Rosenthal was a former player, right? What you mostly had here was a whole lot of former players coaching these major league guys. And yes, Driveline has been a factor for the Red Sox over this last couple of years, and specifically, it's been a factor on the pitching side of things, right? Where you take a look at it and you say, well, they hired Kyle Bodie as sort of this, consultant would probably be the word, right? Who is the founder of Driveline to work with the pitching side, especially the pitching pipeline for the Boston Red Sox. And we've seen some really interesting successes for the Red Sox pitching-wise this season, right? I mean, again, you had the best bullpen ERA in the American League. You saw some of your starters take legitimate steps forward. I mean, this was the first year where you were like, okay, Brian Bayo can be in the middle to the top of a rotation comfortably and make a legitimate impact. I mean, Giolito, who has been not great for the past couple of years, had this resurgence type year on the mound this season, right? Those are two guys who took legitimate steps forward. And on top of that, you also had a whole lot of young, talented players either fly through the minor league system or surprisingly make their way up. I mean, Conley Early, Peyton Tully, those are two guys who took over the Red Sox farm system for a little bit here. And I'm not going to say it's entirely because of Driveline, but I don't think it's a coincidence that these guys come in here and all of a sudden the Red Sox start pitching a little bit better than they have before. Obviously, a lot of credit also goes to Andrew Bailey and Craig Breslow and all these guys, Jason Varitek too, who have been in part of this sort of run prevention regime the Red Sox have put together, absolutely, but I do think Driveline played a factor here. Now, the one concern that I am totally on board with that a lot of you guys are going to talk about is the injuries, right? You see a lot of these like Driveline-based pitchers end up with Tommy John or end up with multiple injuries because of the way that they are contorting their body, which is different than it ever has been in the past. So that I agree with, especially with younger players, but it's hard to argue that Driveline has been a negative for the Red Sox at the major league level, right? I just think there's been so much impact pitching-wise. And I look at, John, and I look at the word Driveline. I think a lot of people start this war against analytics at the major league level, and I just don't think it's a war that's legitimately there, right? I still think there's a lot of feel in the Red Sox dugout right now. I mean, again, a lot of these guys are former players. Fatsy, Bailey, Cora, Varitek. These are all sort of mainstays in this Red Sox dugout, and they were all on the field at one point or another. They understand the feel for the game. Analytics are a big part of what the Red Sox are doing. I don't think it's the only motivation the Red Sox have. And we've talked about it this season a whole lot, right? Where you sit there and you say, the Red Sox offense was good this year. That in periods of time, they were great this year, but they weren't consistent. There were legitimate holes all over the place that you can point to and say the Red Sox need to figure this out. Now, some of that is simply talent-based, right? You need to get some different talent in here, but some of that was also the approach and the hitting style that the Red Sox were going for. If you can get a new voice in here and someone who's looking at the game a little bit differently, how is that a problem, right? Diversity ends up being a real strength. So I actually really enjoy the fact that John comes from this different background, comes from this different ideology, and can give the Red Sox different perspectives, especially if you have this sort of idea or sort of backing behind it of legitimate success in minor league baseball. My point in all of this is that I don't think Driveline should be this terrifying word, right? I don't think we should add spooky sound effects every time we say the word Driveline on this channel, because I just think there's some legitimate improvements that they can make to this Red Sox team. I understand there are a lot of people who hate the analytics. I've always been an analytics guy. I've been on this channel for 3 years now. You guys understand I like the analytics, right? But I also understand the human aspect of baseball. I do think it's a legitimate conversation to be had here, but I don't think it's entirely Driveline's fault. I sit here with all of this and I say, look, whatever's going to help the Red Sox win baseball games, I'm perfectly fine with the Red Sox doing, right? You bring in Driveline this season and they win close to 90 games. They get into the postseason for the first time since 2021. Again, Driveline's not the sole reason they did that, but it definitely felt like a contributing factor that helped them get to where they are. And again, I sit here and I'm like, a different perspective on the way the Red Sox are approaching their hitting at the major league level should be a positive thing, right? If we have had these issues with this Red Sox offense for multiple years now, having someone come in here who's not going to take over Red Sox hitting baseball, right? I think a lot of people are going to see Driveline and be like, oh no, they're taking over, right? No, right? Obviously, Pete Fatsy is still the main voice there, and obviously above him, Alex Cora is still the main voice there. So you're not really changing too much, you're just bringing in a different perspective, and to me, that makes a whole lot of sense. But I am curious to see, did the word Driveline scare you guys enough where you're already upset about this hiring? Personally, I'm sitting here and I'm not really one way or the other on it, right? Because we don't have anything at the major league level to talk about yet. We're going to have to wait and see what the Red Sox offense actually does to say, yeah, he was a positive, or yeah, he probably was a negative here. So that's my opinion, but let me know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think? As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton, and it's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.